Welcome to the Thriving Creatively podcast, where we're speaking to creatives all over the globe about how they're thriving as an artist in today's world. Today's guest is Nabeel Khan. He's a great friend of mine. He's a sacred geometry artist. He's a painter, he's a photographer, and he does many, many other very, very interesting things. And it was awesome to sit down with him and have just a chat about geometry and how it relates to the soul and how it draws the soul towards itself, about architecture, about all the weird things that we get up to as creatives and different ways that he has personally thrived as a creative in his creative career. So I hope you love the episode, and also this is a brand new baby podcast, so if you could subscribe or leave a review or something like that, that would be so appreciated. So thank you if you choose to subscribe and give us a little rating, 5 stars, like the thing, whatever it is. Anyways, let's get on with the episode. I hope you absolutely love it. I want to hear what was the thing that made you go, oh, sacred geometry?
Sacred geometry?
Yeah. I feel like that's such a big part of you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where did it start? How did it become such a thing? Yeah.
Yeah. 2 things come to mind when you ask that. One of them is a memory I have when I was in primary school, St Albans School in Woodford Green.
Represent!
The big W. The mean streets of leafy Woodford Green, you know, in Essex. It's hooked.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. At a private school. Private primary school. St Albans. And I was in Mr Brown's class, and he was teaching us maths. And I remember the classroom. I remember the greyness outside, and for some, you know those moments in life. This is teaching. You're going to
stay away from the mic, Cheech.
One of those moments in life where you remember everything. You remember the smells. You can remember the smells. Just everything suddenly becomes like burnt in. Just proof for me that it was like a moment, you know, something special was happening. And I got showed how to do, I think they're called Bezier curves, when you get a line there and a line there, so 90-degree lines, and let's say it's 10 centimetres long, then every centimetre you put a mark, or every half centimetre you put a mark along that line, and then you do the same on that line. And let's say you've got, I don't know, 20 points. The 20th point of that line, the top, you draw a straight line between that and the first point along that line. So there's the graph, the y-axis and the x-axis, and you've got 20 points, and 20 points, 1 to 20, 1 to 20.
Yes.
You connect 20 to 1, 19 to 2, 18 to 3, 17 to 4, 16 to 5, and you make this curve.
Got it. Like string art.
Like string art, the exact same science, the exact same maths of that, exact same geometry as that.
Got it.
And I was amazed. I remember I was just in awe that you could do that. And so then you were given an A3 bit of paper and a black pen, I remember pencil, black pen and ruler, and we got to make something. And I almost remember what I made. You know, it's kind of like this standing creature, just like with 2 legs, and they had arms, and they had like face type of thing. And it's all made up of those curves, and they weren't all at 90 degrees. Some of them were like smaller, so it's like a sharper curve. And I remember just being in awe, and that is probably the first place I really remember seeing geometry and being in awe of it. And then between that and the second point, which came to mind when you asked me that question, I accidentally saw it. I saw it without even realising what it was, which is because I grew up in a Muslim family, and so we had copies of the Quran around. And in Islam, they're masters of geometry. They were. I mean, in the golden age of Islam, they were absolute masters. In so many forms as well, not just drawing and painting and calligraphy and stuff. But they, in Islam, in mosques, you're not allowed to represent anything living. So in churches, you have like pictures, you know, stories from the Bible. And remember that the First Testament is the First Testament is the same, is the Old Testament, sorry, is the same in the Quran and in the Torah, I believe, because they're all Abrahamic religions. So Islam, Christianity, and Judaism all share that same thing. So it's not that they don't have the stories to draw on, but in Islam, in mosques, you're not allowed to represent anything living. they say there's lots of people with different opinions as to why, but they say it's because just ignore it, should we leave?
The thing is, she's like right on the microphone. It's fine. Anyway,
you're not allowed to draw anything human or living in a mosque. Because only God's allowed to create something living inside the house of the holy, type something along those lines. And so in the golden ages of Islam, exactly what years that is, I'm not too sure. And again, there's lots of debate as to the reason for this, but because of that limitation, they're like, what can we use to represent the infinite while not drawing anything living? And out of that came they came up with geometry. They didn't come up with it. They had the knowledge of geometry because they translated the ancient Greek texts into Arabic, and that's what gave them the golden age of Islam, because it was the ancient Greek knowledge which got preserved and grew under their guidance and learning and studies. Which gave them the knowledge of geometry. So it's not like they came up with geometry, but it just was, and that really sort of blows my mind now in hindsight, that these great people back then chose geometry to be the thing that kind of sits right in the middle, if you will, between kind of like the divine and our art and our us.
I mean, what else would you choose though? When you think about it, like from the perspective that you have of knowing a lot about it, and from the perspective, like, I don't know anywhere near as much about it as you do, but through you I've learned a little bit. Like, what else would you choose other than that, like, super measurable, but also like, how does it make sense? It fucking makes sense. Like, there's so much in what I've learned from you in like your workshops of like, what, like that connects up to that, and it's this measurement, and it's this like alignment, like it's so fascinating.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because I think we have this intuitive knowing of the truth of it. And not only the truth of it, because when I think of the truth of it, I think of what maths is. The idea in modern science, essentially, if you prove something mathematically, it is true. If you prove something about... The reason we know so much about black holes and just all this other stuff is because the maths lines up, because we've lined up the numbers. That's why things like we all know the phrase E equals MC squared. Most of us don't, energy equals mass, all that stuff. But it's the maths. It's the maths of it. If you can make sense of the maths of it, then it is. It's that there's a truth to number, which is what Plato and Pythagoras and all that stuff kind of like push so hard, and quite rightly so. They said the number was the closest thing to the mind of God.
Which ties into
all this,
all of it.
So geometry has got that certainty, that absolute truth, like which lines up. And that is very, let me get this right, left hemisphere brain. No,
I don't know my
left hemisphere brain, right, it says left brain, right body. I'm pretty sure it's left, excuse me, you know what I mean if I get this wrong.
I don't.
Left hemisphere is what the tantric would say, the masculine side of the brain. And if you've seen the first TED Talk ever seen called A Stroke of Insight, Jill Bolt Taylor, about a neuroscientist who had like a stroke by being able to kind of analyse her own mind while having a stroke, because one side of her brain totally turned off, and it was the mathematical, to call it mathematical, the masculine kind of linear part of the brain, and that is where all memory sits, memory of anything sits, and also where anxiety sits, and fears and all that kind of thing, because you project forwards. It's very linear, and so you worry about the past and you think about the future, and so geometry satisfies, and maths is the language of that side of the brain, what Tantra would call the masculine side of the brain. And masculine bodies are more angular as well, So there's all these like sort of like layers of poetry to it. But then the other side, geometry also satisfies, and this is where geometry sits right in the middle of the two hemispheres. For me, it's like it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Like, if you look at it, that's another reason why we're so drawn to it, because it's awesome. It's why so many people have tattoos with geometric-based things.
Yeah, why churches are made out of geometry.
And that's gonna be my final. That's kind of part of that second point that I initially said. Like, there's a reason why there's a resurgence in in this ancient knowledge, I feel, and because we are in a Renaissance, I think we're in another Renaissance. Renaissance, by definition, is old knowledge coming to the surface again for like the good of the people, and so like that's what seems to be happening.
Wow, it really does.
Yeah.
Anyway, keep going.
And so I think that's the draw to it. It's the beauty and the mathematical underpinning of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in between. That was my life growing up, being around it, seeing all this beautiful, like kind of arabesque and kind of calligraphy and geometric borders and stuff on these beautiful, all these Qurans and stuff, different sizes in mosques and stuff, and you'd see it, but I never really knew what it was, but I knew it was beautiful, you know. And then as I got older, with that knowing and that awareness of Islamic design and geometry, I started seeing, as I started becoming a bit more of a searcher and a bit more, I don't know, had my eyes open more and more to these things, I started noticing in churches how so many of the windows were geometric. Not all of them, it was all geometric, and there's just geometry seemed to play a big part in cathedrals. And I'm from London, obviously, and there's lots of cathedrals to sort of walk through there, and so like you see that, and then you kind of look at Buddhist mandalas and stuff, and you realise they're heavily geometric. You know, there's sand paintings that do those paintings. I forget what they're called, but those geometric mandalas. And then you look at the design of the pyramids in Egypt, and then you kind of look at the design of the pyramids in South America, and then you see, just everywhere, Judaism. You know, the six-pointed star, and then you realise, wow, like the core. The one thing they all see, all these religions, who most never met, you know, never contacted each other, they all seem to have geometry as like the highest representation of divinity, in one way or another. So for me, that was just a breadcrumb trail. I was like, oh, well, that's a clue, so there's something here. So that was kind of my intro. I don't know where to stop because that just keeps going. Sorry.
I'm curious. Well, let's keep it going because I want to know more. Like, where from there? Like, you went from like a interest, this makes sense-ness of it, to now, like, you know, from where I see it, like, so much of your life is based around geometry, your art, your counting poster, like that piece, like, and all the other pieces, like they're all, and you know, also like the way that you talk, it always comes back to the mathematics and the geometry of it, and the like, and the numbers of it, and the like ratios, like it's like so you. So I'm curious, like, what's the rest of the story between here and now? I mean, that's probably a very fucking long story, but like the highlight reel of the story.
There's a quote by Plato, I can't quite remember, but something about geometry leading one's soul to... Basically, to sum up, basically something along the lines of it brings out the philosopher in someone. And I remember first reading that going, I know that's true, but I don't know why. Do you ever get that? Sometimes you read something, you watch something, you go, I know this is true. It's going to take me God knows how long to figure it out. Here and here, you know, first here and then down to here. And it draws the soul towards philosophy or something along those lines. And I remember thinking, well, how can shapes... Even though I feel the importance of them, how can they draw your soul to philosophy? And I still don't have the words to explain why, but it's exactly what happens. It's exactly what happens, and I don't... Well, I can guess. I don't know if I'm answering a question here.
You definitely are.
Okay. It's the blueprint. It's the blueprint language of reality. And when we say reality, I don't want to say reality in terms of what the Western scientific mind thinks of reality. Oh, this is real, this is real, this is real. Something you think of isn't real. Emotions aren't real because you can't touch them. Show me. Can you measure them? No, so they're not real. That seems to be a very contained and limited view of the word real, reality. But reality, what I'm referring to, is a wider scope. It's everything. It's everything. It's the physical and the metaphysical. Metaphysical meaning beyond physical, you know? Like meta means beyond, I believe. Like there's such a truth and such ultimate knowledge in it that is so big and in some ways obvious that we can't see it. You know, it's so everywhere that you can't see it. It makes you think of the idea of when, you know, a fish is asked to describe what water is. And he's like, what do you want? Yeah, because it's so everywhere that you can't see it. So when you start having the eyes to see, and you brought up this phrase the other night, secrets hidden in plain sight. The Egyptians were masters of it.
Totally.
You know, they had these like big public gatherings and stuff for you know, these major celebrations and stuff, and they'd have all their, it's not as if they'd hide all the major symbols. They'd have all the major symbols out and stuff, but the average person didn't have the eyes to see what they actually meant. It's like, yeah, well, you can see everything, yeah, here you go, but you won't understand it because you don't have the capacity, you don't have the understanding and the depth of knowing to kind of understand it. So it feels like that, and that's not meaning to put me on any kind of pedestal. It's not a higher thing. It's just a.
It's just a knowledge thing.
Yeah.
It's like while you've been talking, I've been thinking about, like, I guess coming from my background, churches are the only kind of like sacred site that has kind of been in the forefront. But when I think about churches, like even the way that they're constructed, and we've talked about this, like, you know, you're talking about the Vesica Pisces, and the church door was like such a big inspiration for my vestibule painting. But like, even like, you know, the angle of the roof, all of it, like, and it's all hidden in plain sight, and most people wouldn't know. But the people who know, it's like, if you know, you know, kind of thing. And maybe I don't know if this is true, but maybe it's also, the more you know, the more you see. Like, I know a little bit, you know a fuckload.
Compared to you.
Yeah.
There's huge amounts I don't know, by the way.
Yeah.
As you're saying that, I'm getting images of my teachers who I kind of like, not that I've had that many physical in-person teachers, but the ones I've had, like, they, you know, they devote their lives truly to it. Wow. PhDs and onwards and books and stuff. And
Wow. But yeah, it does feel kind of like astrology in that way. Like, you know, you can know a little bit, but there's like a whole fucking world of it that you could study for a lifetime.
Yes.
But yeah, with the bringing back the, like, you know, sacred sites and the way geometry has influenced those places of worship in different cultures, in all cultures potentially,
all major cultures,
many cultures at least. I think it's interesting. It's interesting that the people who built those places were pointing towards the divine through the way those places were built. The house is not built the same as a church or a mosque. I don't think, most of them anyway. But yeah, like, there's something about, I can't quite grasp it, but there's something about that hidden in plain sightness of it. And also, like, these sacred, important places have those numbers or those ratios or those things in them.
It's ingrained into the architecture. They said that this is good if I remember it. Music is based on number. Like music, the reason why a third is a third and a fourth is a fourth and a fifth is a fifth and an octave is an octave is because of number. Those things are based on numbers. Okay. Yep. So music is apparently has been said to be number in time. Number in time.
Oh, whoa.
You hear a song, it plays over.
Oh, my God.
You hear a 10-second song, it's 10 seconds long, so that's 10 seconds of time. So that's number in time, right? So I remember this. Architecture is number in space. So
God,
the ratio of a room, of a vestibule, of a tomb room, whatever you want to call it, the center, like the major rooms, all, you know, possibly all rooms in a temple. I don't know. I've not studied to that depth. You know, there's people I know that have. Nothing is chosen for arbitrary reasons. If any mathematicians out there, you know about the 3-4-5 triangle, look at the King's Tomb, the King's Tomb in the Great Pyramid. Like, it's a 3-4-5 triangle, and it's I'm not, without any images, I'm not going to go into it, but it's like 3-4-5, and it's 3-4-5 triangle is such a fundamental staple of trigonometry, of basic school type of geometry they teach, and it's built into the exact architecture of the King's Tomb in the Great Pyramid. And I'm sure there's countless examples of that. So you get number So you get music, which is number in time. You get architecture, which is number in space. And then you get astronomy, all classic arts, you know, that the people, you know, high societies have deemed important for a long time. You get astronomy, which is number in time and space.
Oh, fuck off!
Yeah. So number in time, number in space, number in time and space. So, and the common denominator amongst all of it, number.
Wow.
You know.
Totally.
So then if you in a particular room which is built to a certain numbered ratio with particular music which is written to a numbered ratio at a particular time when the stars are lined up in a particular numbered ratio, and you're aware of all these ratios, I kind of see it like when you draw geometry and you've got these, like, say 4 points, to call them that just now, 4 points lined up, and they're lined up and you draw a line from the top all the way down to the bottom point. That's what these people often did. Like, you know, I'm sure you have heard of lots of rooms in different temples that get the sun at just a particular morning, you know, and people travel from all over the world to see these temples. And there's a statue. Yeah, there's a statue, or the Stonehenge, all that kind of stuff. But sometimes temples which have a room, and it's the heart of the temple often, doesn't see the light of day, literally. Doesn't see the light of day except for like one morning or something. You know, they designed it like that. When humans get to that level of knowledge and whatever you want to call it, beauty, wisdom, all that stuff, it just feels like you're lining yourself up with the whole universe. You're lining yourself up with not only the universe, but the metaphysical universe, you know? Like, quantum physics is telling us factually there's other places. There are other places. The mathematics, again, proves there are other dimensions, and not just a few. There's fucking, you know, the amount we can see, like, that's a whole different conversation.
There's so many places we can take.
So many places we can go. Spectrums of light and what humans can see and what X-rays and insects can see, and then you've got the rest of this spectrum of light, and this is... Yeah, so like it's just that, to go back to that line analogy, there's something that feels so... It draws my soul to that way of living. And I'm not anywhere near that, you know, but I have glimpses of it sometimes. I'm like, wow, looking up at the stars and get to the point where I go, fuck, I understand even a fragment of the beauty of the heavens. And I understand how that relates to music, and I understand how that relates to architecture, and I can understand how that relates to me and my soul and my understanding and my heart, you know? And that you suddenly just feel this beautiful connectedness, which is based on number and facts.
Whoa, and kind of is the meeting point of many religions.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, because they say geometry is true, again, a Plato thing, geometry is true for all men of all times, of all cultures. You can't fight over that because there's no difference.
Yeah, totally. It's not belief, it's true.
Yeah. One is one. Triangle is a triangle. A square is a square. Like, it doesn't matter what culture you're from, how much you want to kill each other. Like, you can't argue over that, you know?
Totally. Whoa, okay. There's so many places I want to take this. But there was one thing that you were saying that I want to circle back to.
Yeah.
Which was something about schools. And it was something about if we were taught this in schools. And so I want to bring up this counting.
I said this another time, did I?
No, just now.
Oh, did I?
I can't remember exactly what it was. I can't remember exactly what you said, but it made me think about... Cheers.
Yeah.
About schools. And it made me think about your counting poster that you've made. That kind of is made from that place of... If only they taught this in schools in a way that would make it... Because if it was fun... Sorry, I'm tripping my words here.
Go.
In a way that it would make it fun. Because if it was fun, I would have been so much more interested in learning about maths and in learning about science to a degree, but maths more. Like, you know, if it was given to me in that visual way that you presented in...
Yeah.
Like, I'll get a copy of the poster and put it on the...
And we'll link it and all that.
Yeah, we'll link it in the thing and all the things. But in the way that it's provided, like, that poster is so, like, you know, on the surface it's like a bunch of symbols. But, like, I can tell that there's so much study behind that poster. Like, there's so much in there. And there's so many like, it points to so many things. And the reason why I brought it up was because, you know, we're not taught this. We're not taught any of it in that way. And when I then, you know, bring it to the temples that we were talking about, you know, the temple that has, you know, the sun lines up on a specific day and it illuminates the temple, and it was probably made in an age way before us where things were so much more like, I can't, like, you know, I don't know shit about history, but like in an age where things were maybe more pointed towards the divine, or maybe even from a society that was more advanced from ours, more advanced than ours, sorry, and maybe they learnt geometry in that way, and maybe that I'm really like just building building a world here, but like maybe it was, what I'm trying to get at is maybe it being taught in that way can help people to really like come back to real truth, not just like, I'm learning maths because I have to learn it. Like, do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I think one of the things you said at the beginning of that was like, if maths was taught in a fun way, if it was fun or something. I think that, like, I know what you mean by that, but I think the word fun could be replaced with visually. If maths was taught visually, because the culture that we live in, have been brought up in predominantly, is, to talk about the hemispheres again, is left, and just to clear up that the left hemisphere, and if I get this wrong way around, you know what I mean, it's the other way around, it's one or the other, you know. Left hemisphere is tantrically speaking, like, and I talk about tantra because I'm not talking about the sexual side of tantra. I'm talking about tantra as an idea, as an entire philosophy, basically, based a lot around the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine. I keep looking right into the camera.
By the way,
to you,
just in case you didn't know,
sacred feminine. It's basically polarity is built into it. And that's a large part of what I kind of take from it. And so that's like the masculine side. So it's not about boy girl. It's nothing to do with trans and man. Nothing. It's not about gender. That's gender. You know, we're talking about beyond that. We're talking about sort of masculine, feminine, like the archetypal masculine, feminine energies. The left hemisphere is it's very linear. It's very linear. So you've got the right. Let me start with the right hemisphere. The right hemisphere is all about the now.
Okay.
Sorry if I'm going over my words a bit here. I'm just trying to get a whole scope of it. You know, like the right hemisphere is kind of like a live feed. Okay, so imagine you've got like this TV station which has got all the information coming from your ears, from your eyes, from your skin, from your nose, and just all your senses. It's all about now. It has no idea about time. That entire room, to think of it as a station, whatever it is, that entire space, that entire hemisphere, the right hemisphere, which is the left side of the body, has no concept of time. But it's what... If I could ask you what you're tasting right now, if I could ask you to feel the clothes on your skin right now, like the temperature, all that is all a live stream of information into the right hemisphere of the brain, the feminine side.
The creative side.
The creative side. It doesn't have any bounds. It's just like there's no time. It's just this... I see it very spherical. It's very circular. It's very curved. It's very like... feminine, I guess, if you're coming from the worlds we've come in and sort of neo-tantric and all that kind of alternative sort of thinking. So that is that side of the brain. The left side of the brain, this is the masculine one, this is what I was fumbling over earlier, takes all that information from the live feed, because essentially they're totally separate. The only interconnectedness between the two hemispheres is this lump of like fibers or whatever, fucking something, like wires basically, billions of them at the base back here somewhere. I'm not a neuroscientist, and that's where information gets sent back and forth. But aside from that, they're essentially different people.
Whoa.
They're essentially different. They totally have no other contacts except through that, as far as we know. So the left side of the brain, the masculine side, takes all that information and compares it up against things you've seen and experienced and known in the past and things you know, and projects forwards with your previous knowing, your current information, and projects this is what's going to happen next. Oh, when I go to the post office at this time of day, it might take this long at the queue. That's your left side of the brain that's doing that. Oh, I need to remember to go get this from the shopping when I get back. That's the left side of the brain doing that. So that's what it's doing. It's like, and remembering, anytime you remember anything that's not now, anytime you think about something, anytime you worry about anything, anytime you're anxious about something you did in the past, or stressed, or just whatever, anything not now is that, and that's like a line. One, you can think of it as a 1, and you think the other one is a 0.
Got it.
What does that make you think of?
Circles and lines?
Computers, binary.
Oh, computers!
Ones and zeros.
Fuck.
Every phone you have, every computer you have is all ones and zeros. We've kind of created our own brain.
Oh my
Whether they
God.
took that as inspiration, I don't know, or just, I probably think unconsciously, because unconsciously we're just fucking drawn to this divine knowledge, whether we know it or not, you know, and that's a part of all this we'll talk about probably. So that's a real quick rundown of the 2 hemispheres of the brain. Like I said, we should link to that TEDx talk too, because it's so good. It's Jill Bolt Taylor. The book's called A Stroke of Insight, and the talk's called A Stroke of Insight. And like it's the first TEDx talk I ever saw. She even brings the human brain out on stage. It's fucking fantastic, to show that like fucking fibrous thing. But that's essentially the reason I tell you all that, is because geometry is something which we touched on earlier, sits in between the 2 hemispheres, or satisfies both hemispheres, should I say. So I see that as sitting in between. It satisfies the masculine side of needing understanding and engineering, and this is this and that is that, and 1 is 1 and 2 and 2 is 3 is 3. I understand. I'm the engineer, I'm the architect, I'm the mathematician, I understand. It satisfies that because it ticks all those boxes in abundance. But it also satisfies that beauty side of stuff, as we said about earlier.
Much.
So, this is where I can carry on the point that I brought up earlier. Our culture, our teaching culture especially, is based far too heavily, where the scales are completely tipped on the side of the left hemisphere, the masculine, the straight, the one side of thinking, which essentially is the people who do best, generally speaking, are the learners and regurgitators. If you can memorize large chunks of anything and regurgitate it in one way or another, obviously it's different for like language papers in English and all that kind of stuff, but within reason also not, like the ones who regurgitate the most are the ones who get the highest grades, who get the best positions at university, who kind of end up being the leaders, and those leaders end up being the influencers and being the shapers and the moulders of the academic influence, higher echelons of society. Then you can see how the tipping happens. And so and so people like us, I was stupid at school. My average mark was C, C's and B's. We had GCSEs in England up to 16, and we had A-levels. I had to drop out of A-levels at college. I had to drop out of computing, or asked to leave. Because apparently at the end of the first year I did so badly that even if I got 100% in my second year, I still would have barely passed type of thing. And so after hearing that, I was like, I'll leave. But thankfully I had 1 year to do something else, because I wanted to third A-level, and I did art, and it was one of the best things I ever did. So perfect. So because that's the structure of it's slowly changing education. I work in schools now, so I see it. It's very, very slowly changing. So there's very little room for creative thinking. They used to call it lateral thinking, like just creative thinking. And that is one of the things that geometry gives you.
Because it's like a framework, right? A framework that you can work within.
Maybe, but
you learn it.
Maybe, but it's almost not so literal, and that's the funny thing about geometry. It's not so like, oh, okay, I really know how a triangle works, so I can apply the triangle to this. For me, at least, and for no one, it doesn't really work like that.
Really?
It changes your brain.
Say more.
I can't. I can't. I think this is part of the thing that quote, which I've really got to get, about this geometry leading your soul to philosophy. Yeah, it's like I don't have the words for that. I don't know why, but it's so true. It's so true. And I think it's so hard for us to get our head around and hearts around, because our culture has, and we can't undervalue, maybe is the closest word I can think of now, how much our society has shaped our thinking, how much our language shapes our reality. You know, like we have to break free of those things. And for me, which is funny, we've been talking about this a lot, the main way I feel like I've broken free from the normal thinking structure of our society is by studying other ways of thinking. And by that I mean other cultures, and by that I mean history, and by that I mean seeing how other people have lived and other people have kind of thought. You know, to give you just a fragment, something just to kind of run with here. I believe this is true. The ancient Egyptians used to think of thinking as a sense.
Got it.
Like touch, like sight,
Yeah.
like that. So thinking was a sense.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
It kind of is.
It's a lot to consider.
Yeah,
that,
there
isn't it?
is. Yeah, I mean, it kind of is, isn't it?
So to see just one sentence can make you think about something, but imagine if an entire society all shared that belief that it was, you know, and even that might not be the greatest example, but just something, you know what I mean, and how much our society can structure the way we think. And so breaking out of that for me has been a great gift, because I think that has, well, I think it definitely has led to me being more artistic and more creative and more free in my thinking and more free in my feeling. Bit more of an outsider, bit weird, which has got its funny side, but also it could be pretty lonely. I spent a lot of my life feeling quite lonely, in part because of that, I think.
Because of what?
I guess I think a bit differently. I see reality a bit differently, and I fairly often, less so the older I get, the ones that are getting old, right? Like, you know, you kind of temper what you share. You temper what you know, yeah.
Hey, hope you're loving the podcast so far. Quick interruption because I wanted to share something with you. Are you an artist or a creative who's always wanted to learn how to make a living off the thing that you love? How to market it, how to sell it, how to cultivate a healthy mindset behind it, and ultimately how to make money from the thing that is your gift? I wanted that as well. And I really set my mind to studying exactly how to do that. And I learned how to do that. And I've distilled all the knowledge that I got from all of my learnings into a book. It's called Thriving Artist. It's $4.99, and it's a book that's designed to give you the first steps to make that dream a reality. So you'll see it down below. Just click the link and you'll be led to the page. It's $4.99, so why wouldn't you? You can also get a refund if you hate it, so there's really no risk. Click the link below and check out Thriving Artist today. All right, back to the show. I want to talk, I'm going to change tack a little bit.
Yes, go.
I want to talk about your art.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you're also a photographer. You've also done numerous creative jobs that really, I just feel like things just land in your lap in such an interesting way, Nabeel. Like, you know, what I know of you, your work history, is working at Channel 4 in film
and TV.
Yeah. Working as a wedding photographer.
Yeah.
As a boudoir photographer, as a branding a little bit photographer, and then working as well in the mainstream a little bit in schools. Teaching geometry, teaching about fucking stars, astronomy in this blow-up giant dome thing. Like, what?
I've got one downstairs.
Yeah. Oh, fuck.
But I haven't got a blower, and it's covered in mould, so I've got to deal with it.
Got it. We can play with it at some point.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
And currently, I mean, working in photography as well, but those two particularly, the teaching geometry in schools and teaching astronomy in schools, like these things just seem to, you know, I want to talk about this because, you know, this podcast, as it's in its infancy, I don't really know what it's about, but I really like talking to creatives about how they work. Yeah. Because, you know, artists are always wondering about work and making a living and all of that kind of stuff. And I just think the way that you've moved through what I know of what you've done in the world, like you've always seemed to have a job that is pretty aligned with who you are. And it seems like they just appear in front of you, which is super fucking cool. And I'm curious, I don't even know what I want to ask about that, but just even to say it, it's so interesting. Like, for me, like, I've always worked in, like, when I've done my own thing, it's been my thing, but I've worked in, like, you know, as a waitress or on a yacht or in a cheese shop. Like, I've always worked in, like, things that don't really relate to my passions as much. So yeah, I'm curious about your work and, like, the way that you've made a living as an artist and just anything you want to say about that.
Yeah. I haven't I feel like my greatest success is to come. To say that, to be very honest as an artist, the best I did, and by best, it's funny this, isn't it? I meant financially, like in terms of, but like even that is changing for me. But at the same time, we all need to eat, you know. It was when I was a wedding photographer in London working for myself, and I was doing really well, and the marketing was taking care of itself, and it was just generating, just going, and it would have been great, would have been bigger, but I ended up leaving and coming here to Australia with my ex-wife at the time. But I've never had a thriving business doing creativity, but I've also, a part of me hasn't really cared in some ways. Like, I've kind of unconscious devotion to just art and truth.
Yeah.
My art and my truth. It's like I don't have a choice.
Yeah. And to be honest, like, for me, that feels like, you know, financial success is only one part of it.
Yeah.
Like, spiritual success, have I fulfilled or am I on my path success?
Yeah.
You know, I feel like that's part of it, and I feel like that leads to financial success anyway.
Yeah.
And I totally believe, you know, like you say, the best is yet to come.
Yeah.
But also, I see you as someone who is successful in their creativity.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to get to, I guess.
Sorry,
I feel
I cut you off.
No, it's great. It means we're fucking converging, you know? Like, yeah, I'm really happy that I gave, basically one of the greatest things I ever did for myself. This might be good advice, might not be, whatever. But like, I moved to Australia fucking 10 years ago, whatever, with my ex, and the plan was to have babies and have kids. And have babies and kids? Babies, kids, and children. All three of them. And maybe a dog in there. And just settle down and all that stuff. And we've been together 4.5 years, just under 4.5 years. Got to Australia, literally shipped my life over, quit my business, my thriving photography business, came over here, and 7 months later we broke up. Childless, thank God, by then, at that point. And I'd had a chunk of money which we were going to put towards a house, basically, and it was my money, it was for the deposit. And I was on the other side of the world to all my friends and family, and I was going through a massive breakup, biggest breakup of my life. And I was like, oh my God, I'm on the other side of the world to my friends and family, hardly know anyone here, like, what am I going to do? And I had a few days of being distraught alone in this apartment that she'd just left. And then that distraughtness suddenly turned into, hold on, I'm on the other side of the world to my family and friends. I don't really know anyone, and I've got a big chunk of money.
This is actually fun.
That's actually great. Plus, it helped that when I looked at what I could afford rental-wise, because I wasn't going to buy my own, what I could afford to rent in England was a piece of shit place out in Zone 6. 1 bedroom, no soul, just, not good. Compared to what I could afford for the same price in Melbourne. And if you know Melbourne, I ended up in an East Melbourne apartment in an Art Deco building. Just fucking beautiful apartment. It's a really nice apartment, perfect for one person. Half my studio was, half my lounge was my studio, half it was my lounge, and it had an open plan kitchen and just a little balcony. It's just so perfect for me. So it's kind of a no-brainer. I was like, and I had like a 5-year visa, and so I was like, I'm just going to stay full working rights. And so I spent that money. I could have spent it on travelling, but I'd just done a bit of travelling. In fact, I'd just come back from Peru. We haven't even touched on psychedelics yet. Like, that's I can imagine if some of you if anyone's watched this far, I can imagine you're waiting for psychedelics to come up. Like, you're not wrong.
We're getting there.
You're not wrong. It's a big part. But one of the best things I did for myself was actually use most of that money to just live for a few years. And I just used it to pay rent and live, basically. And I could have got a couple of jobs, but I turned them down and I just wanted to find out if I was an artist. And so I just gave myself free rein to do whatever I wanted. And it was mostly drawings and some gouache paintings and then the birth charts. That was another uses as well. And so that came out of that period. And that was actually one of the best things I ever did for myself. It just gave me space to try stuff without financial pressure, which I know a lot of people don't have. But I reckon everyone could most people I think could, if they really pushed, have that situation. Even if it meant living with parents for a while, or living somewhere where it isn't ideal, or further out, or just something. If you really want that, you could probably make it happen. And that birthed the beginning of my designer. Basically, I was already a photographer, but that birthed the beginning of my designer. And you know how that designer is just like the roots of my work now that I'm doing. Canvas and glass and mirror and stuff. Like, it's all design based. Yeah.
Okay, so this is filling in part of the story of Nabeel's journey of becoming, and how the geometry plays in with that, because the design is based on geometry as well.
Yes.
I don't know what my question is. Something along the lines of like, here it is. In that period of time that you were like discovering your artist in that East Melbourne apartment. Did the geometry just come straight back in, or was there something that like coaxed it back? Or
once the geometry was in, it never left. There's a couple of short courses that I did in England at the Prince's School of Traditional Arts, and I'm sure you'll link to that if you haven't talked about it already. But it was like the only place in the world really that it seemed at the time that taught this stuff in at least in some capacity. And geometry is the heart of what they teach. And they teach all sorts of like classical arts, but geometry is like a fundamental, like a staple of theirs. And I just did 2 week-long courses, but the people I met there and the teachers I met, even though some of them only met for that week, just their teachings have never left me. And fundamentally, the skill of the compass, like what an ancient tool, so simple. That skill was the basis. The skill in ruler work, compass and straight edge, I used to call it. The sign of the Freemasons, that was the real gift that I received from those weeks that I did with them. And so it was those skills were what I used to do my design work. So I was doing everything by hand back then.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. And then you put it in Illustrator later.
Illustrator came later. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And actually, when we're thinking about those circles and straight lines, that is the compass and the straight edge, isn't it? Yeah. Because I'm like trying to think of another shape, but it's like it's all circles and straight. Like even hexagons are straight lines, triangles straight lines.
Yes.
Everything else is straight lines.
Yes.
And circles.
Is
there other shapes that things are built out of?
I don't know. I don't think I can answer that. I don't know. But if you're thinking about the main shapes, and by that I mean the platonic solids, the 5 platonic solids, it's just they're all straight lines. They're all straight lines, and then the sphere is the sphere. Yeah. The sphere is the most perfect shape in existence. Plato used to believe that the sphere was the shape of the soul.
Wow.
The sphere was the shape of the soul. Soul was the shape of the sphere. Yeah, it's so ridiculously perfect, the sphere. Every point, even just on a circle, every point you touch, however fine your point gets, wherever you touch, is the beginning and the end. It's an infinite. It's the beginning and the end. Every single point is the exact same distance from the center on a sphere and a circle. If you've got a sphere and you slice it, and this is a very Platonic idea, he talks about this, like if you slice a sphere, imagine if you do a perfect slice at any angle, any angle, it always leaves a perfect sphere in the shape that you cut. That's always a perfect circle, sorry. So you've got a sphere, you slice it there, you've got a circle. You slice it at that angle, you've got a circle. You slice it there, it's so infinitely balanced and perfect. The same curvature in every direction. Like it's just, it's perfect. Yeah. It's perfect.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. There's so much.
Yeah, there's so much. Yeah, I don't know which way to go, to be honest.
There was something we were going to talk about before.
Roughly about what?
Can't remember.
That's fine.
Yeah, there was something though. I don't know. Okay, what am I going to ask you now? What's my next question? Birth charts.
Yeah, birth charts.
The birth charts came in. I mean, when I met you, you were doing the birth charts.
Yes.
And you were doing these birth charts by hand on this beautiful paper. I think the beautiful paper came later, but when I first met you, you were doing it on, I think, normal-ish paper. And making these, like, custom, super beautiful birth charts. And this is another way that I can, like, tie this back into, like, people thriving creatively and, like, what can you do as a creative to make money? There are so many fucking things that you can do to make money. And you're also most likely, and this has been true for me and true from what I see in you as well, is most likely you're not going to do the same thing constantly for your creative work. You'll do, like, a chunk of this and a chunk of that and a chunk of this and a chunk of that, and it'll go through a cycle. And as a creative person, you know, you're constantly getting the next download for, like, what's the next thing I'm going to do? Birth charts, what's the next thing I'm going to do? Paintings, what's the next thing I'm going to do? Work in schools and teach geometry, what's the next thing I'm going to do? Glass, we haven't even talked about the glass. Like, we haven't even talked about the sign writing. Like, you know, we're always getting the next download for what the next thing is. And I think it's super normal. And I think as long as you can, like, really trust and hear and act. I think act is actually a really big one, because I think a lot of artists hear the next thing, but a lot of artists don't act on what they're being told for whatever reason. But anyway, bringing it back, birth charts. You were doing these birth charts for a while. And, like, can I talk about the Kardashians?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Kardashians fucking bought some of these birth charts.
It wasn't the Kardashians. It wasn't the Kardashians. I've got to tell the whole story.
Tell. Do it.
So I listed them on Etsy, as well as on my website, and then I get this random message from this. I had lots of American clients when I listed them on Etsy, and this one person saying, I'll be interested in getting 2 of the larger birth charts. I was like, cool, that's a pretty big order. I was like, okay, cool, yeah. And he's like, okay, before I go ahead and order it, would you be willing to sign a non-disclosure agreement? I remember just being like, because I worked in TV and film, so that's often, you know, I knew what they were, and I was like, sure, okay. And I still just didn't, I don't know what the hell it was. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll sign it. So I signed it, and then he was fine with it, so he put the order in, and he sent me the birth details, and the birth details, by that I mean, like, the full name, date of birth, place of birth, and time of birth. Yep. And it's for fucking, I'm so bad with their names. Kendall Jenner.
And Kris Jenner, I think.
And her mother.
Yeah, Kris Jenner.
Yeah. Yeah, Kris Jenner. And I remember showing my girlfriend at the time, I was like, that's the Kardashians, right? She's like, yes. Yes, that's the Kardashians. And it was legit, and it was this, I feel like I can talk about it now.
Okay.
I hope. It was this skincare company.
Don't talk anything that you wouldn't be able to say.
Yeah, it was a company that were doing this advertising campaign with them, and they wanted to gift them something. On top of probably all the other money they paid them, wanted to gift them something. Yeah. And this guy, bless him, was a lovely, super camp guy from LA, and he was just so lovely. And he just goes, I've just found your stuff on Etsy. He's looking for something unique, you know, Etsy's the place to go, I guess. And he goes, I just love what you're doing, and I know, he goes, he's really into astrology, and I think they are too, or at least one of them is. I'm hoping at least, you know. And he goes, I think they'll love it. And so that's why he got me to order them. So there's me painting, like, fucking hand painting Kendall Jenner's birth chart and Kris Jenner's birth chart. I kind of wish I knew a bit more about them, but I don't, and I'm also glad I don't.
Yeah.
But they never posted about it. They never posted about it. It's one post from them, because I think at the time Kendall Jenner had like 3 million followers on Instagram. Kris Jenner had, God knows, over 1 million. Yeah. And I was like, wow, one post. Because each their post was getting hundreds of thousands of interactions, you know, likes, and God knows how many posts. Back when they used to say how many likes and stuff you got. And I was like, wow. I even wrote to someone, fucking kind of semi-pleading, kind of semi-begging. Just say, would you mind just saying? But didn't get a reply, obviously. But can you imagine how much stuff they get given?
Yeah.
It's so fun, isn't it? The richer you are, the more free stuff you get,
It's
I think.
true.
Like, it's so ridiculous. The people that don't need more free stuff are the ones who get
the ones that get all the free stuff, totally.
So yeah, but my energy threads are connected out of fucking those two.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Like, I just think it's so, like, hearing your story and piecing it together just really highlights to me, like, how if you follow the thread, things just come. You know, you'll just be shown what the next step is. Like, even today, that canvas. Like,
oh my God.
we had, oh my God, there's so much to this story. Nabeel's got these paintings. These paintings.
Can they see that? Is that in the shot? Okay.
Yeah. But big version of this.
That was a mini version, yeah.
Yeah. So this is a quarter of the size of what the big
versions
versions
are.
are.
Quarter.
And so he's got these two paintings,
Fucking
right?
ages. Yeah.
So what?
Go on.
Okay. He's got these two paintings that are kind of like these healing portals. Maybe we can talk about that because I had a whole experience with them the other night. But anyways, made the canvases himself. And maybe you should tell the story.
Well, I made 4 canvases and by hand, and they were 1200 mil, 120 centimeters. Yeah, 1.2 meters squared.
Yeah,
they're square canvases. And I made 4 of them, and I've exhibited them, and and I really like them. And I wanted to do bigger ones, but I wanted to do landscape or portrait, you know. So I kind of wanted like longer one side, but 1.2 shorter side. The other side's longer. And because I've moved on, I'm learning a new medium right now. I'm learning glass work and sign writing techniques to sort of apply my art into that. And today, I came back from work and there was a massive canvas just left on the side of the road here. And I don't know if it's the same in other countries, but it's less so in England. But like, people just leave stuff out. It's hard rubbish, they call it. Just leave stuff out for someone else to take. And 9 times out of 10, it's taken. Someone takes it. Like our shoe rack out the front of the house is from hard rubbish up the road we found in a dog walk with Cheech, you know? Like, it just...
What's that thing called? The tripod was hard rubbish in Melbourne.
Oh, really? Yeah, hard rubbish.
Yeah, hard rubbish.
And there was a massive canvas out there, and I was looking at it, and I was like, that looks like a pretty good size. I didn't think, and I forgot about it, to be honest, and I saw it about an hour, half an hour maybe before we started filming this. And I went and got it from outside, brought it inside, and I put it up against the 4 paintings. It's 1.2 meters high. Like the 2 shorter sides of it, it's exactly what I was asking for, was planning on making, is 1.2 meters high, and I haven't measured the other one, but this doesn't matter because it's just perfect. It's perfect.
It's perfect. It just lands in your lap.
It just lands in my lap.
It's so cool. And I just really feel like that is the essence of following what lights you up, following the call of whatever it is. Like, for you, the call is like geometry and art, and you know, I mean, there's way more to it, but like, I feel like, you know, that call started back in that classroom. Yeah. You know, and you've been following that thread, and it just seems to me like, looking at it from a bird's eye view, which is something that I do quite a lot, and it's kind of how I look at a lot of things from far away. Fractaling out, fuck off. Yeah. Looking at it from a bird's eye view, I'm like, wow, like, if you just follow, if you just listen and like go into the things that interest you, like, it just gets provided. It just gets provided. It's like, here, take the canvas. Here's a job that's really related to what you do. Here's something that's going to teach you something. Here's this. Like, just through listening and, like, being authentic. Yeah. And, not a bit of a rant here, but, like, bringing it back to also, you know, how you were saying, like, oh, I'm a bit weird. Yeah. Like, I just think if everyone actually followed the thing that they really, are interested in, that, like, everyone would be a bit weird in their perfect way.
There's this TED Talk, I forget who it's by, more recent one. It's funny how much TED Talks coming up today. Yeah. And she listed all these, like, incredible people. Yeah. we're talking like Nelson Mandela type of vibe, you know, like that. And just listed all these like people. It says, what's the commonality amongst all of them? And they were really uniquely them. Like they were very uniquely them. Like there's no other they're so different. It's so different. But they just let themselves be who they are as much as possible. Yeah, it just came to me when you said that. And it's nice. I should remind myself of that a lot more. And yeah, my wound growing up, a lot of it was not fitting in, you know, and feeling a bit outsider and stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to say as well, like, and I'm not saying you're saying the opposite to this, but I just want to iterate. I haven't had an easy ride with thriving financially in this life. Actually, quite the opposite a lot of the time. Like, I haven't done that well financially for large periods of my life. And in part, it's because I've been devoted sort of like without... somewhat unwillingly and willingly, but almost there's a greater force than me that's pushing me forwards. And I've never put money and stuff as a high importance. And you know, it's got me in some hot water sometimes, and it's been challenging. I've had a hard time with it at certain periods of my life, especially with COVID. COVID was real tough for me as an artist, but still, like I've still got this like determination just to keep on going. Like I couldn't buckle down and put that part of my life away in a box and just go, okay, I'll come back to it in 10, 15 years, whatever, after I've sorted myself out. Like, no, like I couldn't. That would be like death for me. Yeah. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. And it probably is the thing that will sort everything out.
Yeah,
you
it
know?
will.
The following of it is what sorts it out.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, because I can feel it. I can feel it coming. It's feeling so big. Even you having the interest to talk to me about this and the way this conversation's unfolding is making me realise, yeah, there's something... Well, my gut was right the whole time, even though it couldn't tell me where the goal was or when the goal was going to come and all that. But there's something very special opening up. And it ties in nicely to my spiritual life, I guess, to call it that. Like, I've kind of had and I think it's important to have guiding words for yourself. Maybe that's not the right phrase. Guiding phrases, or there's a word for it that I can't think of. A motto, perhaps. And mine is that my dream is to have my spiritual life and my spiritual practices on that side, and my artist and my art I create on that side, and them to become so intertwined, very double helix-like, become so intertwined that they're totally interchangeable. They're almost in... What's not being able to separate, not being able to tell, the interdependent, whatever the word is, not being able to sort of see one from the other. Yeah, whatever, something like that. Just to go there, they're kind of one and the same. They're coming together to make something. Like that would be that is my goal. Yeah. And it's like an ongoing goal. It feels like a practice.
Yeah, you're doing it.
Yeah, I just and experiences you're having with my painting, which is kind of exactly what I wanted to happen, is testament to that now as well, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to speak about that. Oh my God. So these two paintings, there's this one and its twin, or twin opposite. What do I want to say about them? I had an experience last night in between both of them as they were intended to be, and I had an experience between them as they weren't intended to be as well, when one of them was a bit skewed off and it felt fucking weird being in, like really fucking off being in the middle of them, like I couldn't quite access them. But when they were moved so that one was in front of me and one was behind me and one was the negative of the other one, I had this experience of sitting in between them and like feeling the field between them, like meeting in the middle and completing each other. Like, and I felt the healing portal of those two paintings, like doing me over. Like it was wild. It was wild. And I really like, you know, there's so many artists that I want to get on here and so many people in the visionary art community, especially, that really talk about the healing power of art and how you can really, like, you can impregnate your art with with shit like that, with healing properties. And we could also even bring it back to what we were talking about, the temple, the ratios of the temples, the sounds that you're listening to while you're painting it. Like, all of that gets embedded into the painting in some way. Like, there's so many layers that we can access with these, I guess it's left brain, right, both brain hemispheres. But, like, I don't know, I just feel like there's so much here in that space. There's so much potential for, and there's so many people that I know of doing similar, not exactly the same, but similar, and I'm sure I'll talk to them, similar things in different ways, very different ways, but creating work that is not just designed for beauty, but is designed for healing. And I think it's so interesting. And I had such a visceral experience with those two paintings last night that I'm just so excited to see what you do next and like what comes out of, like, you know, these great experiments you've been doing with everything that you do with the glass, with these paintings, with the geometry, with the illustrator, with the, like, it's so infinite what you can create, and it feels like your life's work. And it feels like, you know, from some of the visions that you've shared with me of what you want to do with these works, like, it's just, I'm just really excited about it. I'm just really excited about it. And it's cool to be able to share this conversation and, like, see how far it reaches and where it goes. And, you know, like I said, the podcast is very, very new and very young, but I'm just so interested. I'm so fascinated to see what happens.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah. And that, just to speak to what you said there, like, it feels like what you're describing is a large part of that Renaissance I'm talking about.
Ooh, that's what I wanted to circle back to.
Yeah, because
the Renaissance thing.
We have, like, we've been cut off from our connection to the divine directly for a long time. My family comes from Pakistan. Both my parents from Pakistan, and Islam there is what Islam is in a lot of countries, and I'm not here to badmouth anything, like, you know, like, it's got so much, such a beautiful religion. It's such a beautiful religion, but it's the practices of it. It's the social application of those religions, and not just Islam here, like all of them, that I often have issue with, because there's so many ways of practicing Islam. There's so many types of Muslim. There's so many types of, like, just, you know, approaches to marriage, approaches to music even. Some Muslims would have you believe there's no music allowed at all. Like Taliban, for example, have got quite a, from the little I know of them, have got a really harsh outlook on music and saying it's forbidden. And, you know, and there's Sufis who fucking sing every day. They sing their hearts every day, you know, for Allah, for the celebration of the divine. A quick thing I want to say about the Sufis, just because I love this so much, like, that's kind of what I'm drawn to hugely in terms of Islam, is the Sufis. Sufis are renowned for being kind of the rebels in Islam, and I'm always drawn to rebels in one form or another. And they don't know where the name the Sufis came from. They think it was either from the name of the blankets they wore, so often quite, is it a steer when someone's poor? I forget what the word is, but they didn't have much money, often, a lot of them, and so they wore these blankets that were, say, it could mean the blanket wearers, but it could also mean the name of these benches that used to have outside mosques, which are called sufs or something like that in Arabic. And there's a story which I heard the other day that the Sufis, from this wonderful Sufi woman, she's like, Muslims in this city would be going to the mosque to pray on Friday, especially Fridays, like the Sunday in church type of thing. They'd be going to the mosque, and the Sufi would be sitting outside, and they'd be like, why do you go to the mosque to pray? The divine is everywhere. Like, you know, you don't need, you of course go if you want, but everything is divine. Everything fucking is seeping with the dew of infinite, you know? Like, it's everywhere. So yeah, this is just an example of the range of things of Islam.
Got it.
I just got to remember my point here.
Something about the Renaissance.
Yeah. No.
Lost it.
This is where editing comes in, maybe. I don't know.
I also like leaving.
Leaving
in the stumbling bits.
Leaving the stumbling bits.
Yeah.
The Renaissance
and Sufism.
We don't have to go back, but let's talk
about
it.
But I really want to. It's so interesting.
Yeah, okay.
It's so interesting to me that, and it makes sense. When I think about, like, you know, the re-emerge, or not re, but emergence. We haven't even talked about fucking psychedelics either. But anyway, we may not. Maybe getting, I don't know how long we've been going for. Probably about an hour.
Yeah.
The re-emergence or the emergence of more spiritual and coded art.
Yeah, we've forgotten. Yeah, that's it.
And how, like, that is, like, that's coming back in a big way.
Yeah, so basically this is
people with tattoos.
This is what I was. Yeah, this is kind of just reminding me what I was saying about, and this is. We've been cut off from our connection with our own connection with the divine. The thing about the social application of these religions, be it Christianity or whatever, is in many ways, especially Christianity, and these aren't my words, but they're great words, it's like they've put like a middle management between the divine and the person. You know, it's this layer of priests, in Christianity at least, where you go to and you talk to the divine through them.
Got it.
And back in the old days, you used to pay them too, because, you know, fucking business. And as a great man once said, God can never, he's all powerful, all divine, like knows everything, can do everything, but it's not that good with money. So churches always need a bit of money, you know. They're always like George Carlin, for fucking George Carlin fans out there. So there's always middle management type of thing, you know, and mix that with the way the what was it called when the Christians went across Europe and sort of did the persecutions? It will come to me, but they kind of like Inquisitions. Have you heard of the Inquisitions?
Kind of.
Fucking terrifying.
Really?
Yeah, this kind of like all empowered like priesthood that would go around and basically inquisit people, which is basically they'd fucking use torture if they wanted to. They use anything to sort of like see if you were connected with the devil, if you were kind of like an alchemist, God forbid you're an alchemist, or if you were a woman connecting with just spirits in nature, like, you know, and if you were found to be that after having been tortured, then you were put to death, you know, that type of thing. And they kind of obliterated the surface level of people very openly practicing these practices, which I kind of think we're doing now, you know. Mm-hmm. And this is what I mean. It's like, because we've got freedom now, we've got freedom to do what we want. We're not going to be incarcerated or burnt at the stake for doing all this stuff now, at least not in this country. Other countries still probably, many countries probably. We get the freedom to sort of practice this, but we're children. I've said this often. We're children finding our way in the dark. We don't have teachers anymore. We don't have the lineages anymore. They've been severed, so we have to build from the bottom up. Yeah. Find each other. Yeah. Share notes. Yeah. Not keep stuff to ourselves. Like, share notes, and then by the time we're at the end of this life, we get to pass on our knowledge to other people who are inspired by it. And then that's the beginning of a lineage.
Wow.
You know?
Wow, I really see it. You know, talking about this renaissance that seems to be happening. Like, I totally, like, when you explain it to me like that, I totally see it. And, you know, I'm so technology, but, like, I think technology is part of it.
Yes.
I think Instagram, I think TikTok, like, that is how we're finding each other.
Communication.
You know? Oh, totally. Like, even, like, I wouldn't even say spiritually, but just learning-wise, knowledge-wise, the amount I have learned from TikTok, I have learned so much. So much, just because the algorithm thinks that that's what I want to know because of what I've already said through watching that I'm interested in. Like, I just think it's so fascinating that is how people are finding each other now. Like, it's so new. It's so new. Like, it's not comparable to anything that I know. And to be fair, like we've been talking about, I don't really know that much about world history, but like, to me, I'm like, it just seems like, yeah, there's just so much going on, and maybe like years down the track, we're going to look back at this time and be like, whoa, like so much was exploding. Yeah. So much knowledge, so much Yeah, I'm just so curious what we're going to look back at this time.
Makes me think of something that Alan Moore once said in a video, which is just like so, pivotal for me in many ways. But Alan Moore's a comic book writer, and he wrote Watchmen. He wrote, he's written lots of famous V for Vendetta and stuff. He just very monumental comic books. English guy, very smart. Looks like Merlin who found loads of weed, and just lost his biscuit a bit on weed. But he's this big beard, long hair. Like he's a great looking guy in that respect. And he says this notion of kind of like the time between the dawn of man and fire, like the knowledge of fire. Let's say it was 10,000 years, 5,000, whatever. Just pick a number, whatever. Many years. And between fire and the wheel was half of that. So let's say 10,000 years for dawn of man to fire, 5,000 years from fire to the wheel, 2,500 years for the wheel to, I don't know, whatever, and then less, and then every time it gets less and less and less and less and less and less and less, and to the point where there's a new idea, and this is basically ideas-based thing. There's a new idea every millionth of a second, and an idea, just to call it that, is an umbrella term here for anything that's created. A tweet, a post, a TikTok, a new conversation, a new idea, a new invention, a whole new company, a new thing. And to the idea of like, if you see it, it's kind of like going from there to there to there to there to there, and it's getting to such a crescendo of frequency that something will eventually change.
Wow.
Some threshold will be popped through, and we'll find ourselves on the other side.
Whoa.
Whatever that is, I don't know.
Whoa.
Of consciousness, whatever that is. You know, she knows what I'm saying.
She knows what you're saying.
She's already there.
She's
sitting there waiting for us.
Totally.
Yeah, I know, yeah, I'm here.
Obviously.
But that idea, and it's always stuck with me, that idea, because we're in such an ideas-based world. Communication, ideas, more. Like it does feel like we're just arcing up on this, like
exponential up. Yeah, and it, like when you were talking, I was totally seeing the numbers again.
Yeah.
Like especially the way that you presented it, like the years between,
yeah,
getting half and half and half and half and half and half and half, like. That shit's visual.
Very visual.
I can see it.
If only we were taught visually. That's what this poster does. That poster does. You teach people visually. There's two things I want to finish with. Let's hope I remember the second one after I finish the first one.
Why don't you say both of them now so we bring it back?
One of them is God and number. The second one is the idea for the counting poster, where it came from. So the counting poster, it came from the ancient Greek idea, and I imagine they would have got it from the Egyptians, because they got everything from the Egyptians, according to them. But some historians don't believe that, even though the Greeks say it themselves. But like, anyway. It's counting stones. And so the ways to teach counting was with counting stones. Now, in the poster, they're perfect spheres. They don't have to be spheres, but let's just say they are. It looks nicer. So 1 is 1. You put 1 down in front of a child and you teach them the number 1. And you put 2 next to each other, and you teach the number 2. You put 3. You never put 3 in a line. I think most people, if they were given counting to teach their kids, they'll probably put 3 in a line, just naturally. You always put 3 in a triangle.
To me, in my head, I was like, it goes in a triangle.
4 always in a square, 5 in a pentagon, 6 a hexagon, 7 a heptagon, 8 an octagon. And the child doesn't know any better. The child is learning. The Greeks would say they're remembering, because it's not that we're learning something new, because it's so innate in us, number, that we just remember it. And there's a great thing about Plato getting a slave boy who has had no official education, definitely had no education, to solve a geometric problem with a bit of prompting, but he solves it himself, and there's proof to the Greeks that this knowledge is innate, numbers and shape.
Wow.
It's doubling, not doubling. It's doubling. I think it's doubling the square. I can't remember. But yeah, that is the notion that inspired the poster, because I was like, oh, they're so simple, the triangle, the square, and I thought surely someone's made a poster about this, some sort of information. Nothing. Oh my god, counting posters are boring as hell. Boring as hell. 1 chicken, 2 cows, 3
lame.
things. Like no connection
Yours
to
is
anything, you
wicked.
know? And so the idea is fundamentally that when you say to a kid, or an adult, because adults got a lot to learn from this too, you know, that hasn't thought about this before, is when you say the number 3, instantaneously in the child's head or adult's head, a triangle should come. Even if they're not even talking about triangle, they're just talking about 3 bananas they bought. Triangle should come in. You say the number 5, a pentagon should come in, you know? Obviously beyond 10 is less so, but within the first 10 you should have that kind of innate knowing. And that is both hemispheres coming together. That's the numbers of the left masculine side going, yes, that number is that, and that image is, you know, 3 is 3, yeah, I get that. And then also the other side coming and right, and that's visually a triangle. And both hemispheres comes together to make lateral thinking, more creative thinking, and everyone's good.
Everyone's good.
Everyone's good.
Sweet. And God is number?
God and number. God and number. God and number. This was like a good finale.
Yeah.
Like Pythagoras was kind of massive influence, well, a huge influence in ancient Greece for like Plato and stuff. And Plato is someone I read a lot about, and I'm, you know, inspired by a lot, I quote a lot, and everyone does. Like, I think people have said that any philosopher after Plato is just a footnote on Plato's books. He's like he's the philosopher, you know. And Pythagoras, who came before him, studied
it's gonna
in.
Be really loud.
It's gonna be really loud.
Snuffly nose.
Pythagoras studied in Egypt apparently, and after he came back, then he came back and made the Pythagoras' theorem, which is a squared plus b squared is c squared. We still talk about that. And so, like, it was after he studied in Egypt apparently, and he's such a pioneer, such a breakthrough sort of like influencer, I guess you'd call it now, in the Western history. Yeah, he's like the original, the OG type of influencer type of thing. But the funny thing is, apparently, they don't know this for sure because they don't have a full history of his life, but apparently when he went to Egypt to study, they sent him away and said, come back in 15 years or come back in 20 years or something. That's fucking Pythagoras. And then he came back. Because for them, I think that age was really important. No, you need to be a certain age for this knowledge. And then they kind of... I don't know the full ins and outs of it, but... Yeah, just to think that someone who was the influence for Western thing got sent away from Egypt saying,
totally, come back later.
Yeah.
Fuck.
But
wow.
But number was everything to him. Number was like, it was everything, and which means it would have been everything to the Egyptians too. And I've given this a lot of thought, and I've done lots of reading about this. And again, I think this is a Platonic idea. I think one of these things I find difficult in our age of so much information and so much data and so many fucking files and so many things is I forget. It's getting to a point where my memory of things and my creations and my thoughts are often merging with other people. You know what I mean? And I go, wait, did I think that or did someone else's? But I'm pretty sure this one is a Plato one because it's so good. And it's the idea that like number would have had to pre-exist physical reality. So number pre-exists physical reality. You're going to have to bear with me on this one. So imagine if the Big Bang, and the Big Bang is just a theory, okay? Let's remember this. For a lot of scientific people, I think that is how things started. Like, we don't know for sure. It's a theory. It's the Big Bang theory is what it's called that. If it was the Big Bang that we started with, by definition, that means the first thing, let's just say to it, and I know any physicists out there, I'm so sorry, and I'm oversimplifying to the extreme, but, you know, we're talking symbolically here, maybe, somewhat. If the first thing that existed was fire, let's just say a bang. When you think of a bang, you think of an explosion, right? And part of explosion is fire. For fire to be fire, you need certain elements of the periodic table. You need hydrogen, you need oxygen, you need this. Hydrogen and oxygen molecules, you ask even a fucking high school chemistry student, they'll be able to show you the structure of it. It's a geometric structure, surprise, surprise. It's a geometric structure. Okay, if in the first millisecond of this universe there was fire, and let's say, I don't know the periodic table, I know that hydrogen and oxygen are pretty early, and hydrogen is the first thing, in fact. Let's just say the periodic table kind of like created in chronological order. I'm trying not to get lost here. For the first thing, for hydrogen even to exist, you need the number 6. Let's say it's made up of hexagons. You need the number 6, the idea of the number 6 to exist before the hexagon structure of hydrogen to be a thing.
Whoa.
You need the notion, the idea of the number 6 to be a thing in somewhere, like in the mind of the divine, whatever you want to say, to exist as a thought, as a concept, before a hexagon of chemical structure, to call it that, is made. Do you know what I mean? In which case, if that's true, then the idea of number pre-exists any physical reality.
Whoa.
The singularity, they'd call it, I guess, in physics. The singularity, all energy, the entire universe energy, all into one kind of point. For that, before it bursts out, that means, and I've kind of not done the best job of explaining this, but that means the idea of it would have had to exist pre-reality, physical reality, which, what else is there other than God?
Wow.
You know, to use that word, which itself is so loaded. I don't really like it that much, to be honest. But that thing. And it feels like maybe if that thing is that thing, if God is God just there, just in front of it is number.
Wow.
The idea of number in this kind of like field of possibility. It's ideas. That's what our minds are, right? It's fields of possibility. And then all of creation.
Wow. Wow.
So that is a nice coming round of
we went full circle.
Why number is so important. And why geometry, because if that's God and that's number, then geometry surely comes just after. And then reality, I should say, you know? Then the hexagonal structures of atoms or whatever structures they are. So that's why, because it's that blueprint level, I guess, just before the physical incarnation.
Whoa. That is the perfect place to end. We just, like, I fully feel like we just, like, went full circle with that last part, back to the numbers. And made sense of the whole thing that we were talking about. Like, whoa. That was great. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for being episode 2 on the podcast.
Episode 2.
I hope that you guys love this. I hope you get a lot out of it. I'll put all the links that we were talking about below. I'll put links to Nabeel below. Anything you want to promote at the end here? Planning poster, whatever.
Chi-Chi.
Chi-Chi. The enlightened doggy.
Yeah, the mystical third. 1, 2, 3. The triangle.
Hey. She stands up. She's like, yes, I am. Yes, I am enlightened.
Yes. She's waiting for us just on the other side of that plug hole we're going down. Or up. I don't know, we're going up a plug hole, going down a plug hole. I don't know which it is anymore.
Up.
Maybe both.
Maybe
kind of like
both.
toroidal.
Oh, shit. My brain. Nice. That was great.
Yeah, good.
That was great.
Yes,
nice one,
Cheech.
Cheech.
You did so good.